Okay, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Jeff Hasley. I'm your host, and tonight we are joined with we have a double super podcast here where we have analyst Shane Hallam as well as Matt Bitonti, and we are going to discuss the Panthers draft. We're going to review the picks. We're going to talk about what that means in terms of what we can expect going forward. We'll discuss the three main picks as well as the other picks later in the draft. So we are live in 20 seconds.
Christian McCaffrey in the open field, inside the 30, inside the 20, McCaffrey touchdown.
All right, fandom. Excellent. We are glad to have you here. We're going to talk about the 2022 draft review, and we have with us Shane Hallam and Matt Bitonti. And Shane is a draft analyst. He's an expert in the field. You may know his work from draftcountdown.com or his Devy Marketplace podcast. We are thrilled and excited to have Shane here. He's going to help us break down these picks. And of course, Matt Bitonti, who is an offensive line analyst. He's a writer for footballguys.com. And both these guys are experts in their field, and we are honored to have them here as guests and discuss the Panthers draft picks. So, and also, too, my co-host, Brittany and Tom Schmidt, they are here as well. And let's start with you, Shane, here, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. It's glad to be back. Thanks for bringing me back. And always good to talk draft. I'm just trying to relax now after it's over and get kind of the calm before the next storm before we start counting down to the next one.
Yeah, and also, Matt, it seems like we just spoke with you not that long ago because we had you on talking about offensive line prospects. So now that we have the draft complete, we want to get your take on how things are now with the Panthers line, what this means with Ickey Ekwonu coming on board, as well as a few other things. But Matt, sir, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, the last time I saw you guys, there was 12 people in the draft room. The pick was going off, the night of the draft. And maybe I could be a good luck charm for you guys this year with Ickey,
Yeah, I tell you what, the energy of that draft room in that show was just really fantastic. We had so many great people on, including you all, and it's so great to have you back. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to spend it with us. We appreciate that.
I think I'm becoming a Carolina Panthers fan on the NFC side with all the exposure.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, well, hey, there's definitely room on the couch for you here, Matt. We appreciate it. I mean, we know you're a Jets fan, which is fine. Shane, you're a Steelers fan, if I'm not mistaken, right? Okay.
Yep.
Both proud franchises. So just so that our viewers know what I just want to give a quick rundown of what the topics are that we're going to discuss. So we want to go over an overview of the top three picks, and that's Ickey Ekwonu, that's Matt Corral, and Brandon Smith, the linebacker out of Penn State. I want to talk to you, Matt, specifically about the Panthers' offensive line, how they rank now, how has this improved, how fast can we get this cohesion that you love to talk about, who is the best left guard for the Panthers. It seems like this is kind of something that's being talked about in Panthers Twitter is, well, should Ekwonu play left tackle? I mean, I don't even want to get into that right now. But Shane, I want to discuss with you the draft class quarterbacks coming in for next season. There's still a group of people who think that, maybe Corral's not the answer, and, they're looking forward as to a potential quarterback in next year's draft. And then if we have time, I want to discuss some of those additional later picks and how that kind of works. But Brittany, why don't you kick us off with our first pick and what the guys think?
Sure. I mean, Ickey Ekwonu, he is a Carolina boy, which I was really excited about. It's always good when we draft somebody, that grew up a fan. Like I always say, I love people who want to be a part of the Panthers franchise. So my questions to you, and I'll break it down into layers so you're not too overwhelmed. how would you grade that pick? All right, if you're in the war room with the Panthers, how would you grade that pick? My first one.
Yeah, I could start. I mean, I would give it an A. I think if you're a team like the Panthers, where to me this is the biggest need outside a quarterback, he was obviously a value there. He was being talked about as a potential number 1 overall pick for a period, right? But when Jacksonville was interested, he was going to be probably that top offensive tackle off the board. So to get him where they did, down at, outside of the top 5, I think was excellent. I mean, I had Ekwonu from week 1 just was a great player, nasty run blocker. I love him getting to the second level. I actually graded him as a guard early in the season because I didn't think he had the chops to play tackle. And about 2 games in, I was like, well, we're moving him. Yeah, like he really developed this year. So I think it's an excellent pick in my book. Hopefully Matt agrees.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of draft grades the week after the draft, but I mean, I see it as an A or an A- as well. There was not many other better picks. They didn't take a worser lineman or, reached on a quarterback or something like that. They took the value on the board. I really like this player. I mean, I'm a Jets fan, as I often mention on these podcasts, and it's like a real confessionary moment. But I mean, the Jets were picking at 4. And I would have been happy if the Jets took him at 4, to be honest, as a fan. Like, that's the type of value he is. He's not a perfect prospect, and he has a lot of things to clean up in the pass blocking technique, but you got to love the fire and the violence and the impact that he brings. And he's like a real tone setter for the offense. And I think that's what, locker rooms need.
Yeah. And that brings me to my next question. Is there a player that you would compare him to? What kind of comparisons? Shane, you can go first, and then Matt, if you could follow up, please.
When I do comps, it's to prospect to prospect, so not necessarily as pro players. So I've been scouting the draft since 2004, so I kind of look back. My comp on Draft Countdown was Tyron Smith as a prospect. Okay. I think he had, I think Ekwonu, similar size, similar build. I think Ekwonu was probably a little better in terms of that run blocking, that nastiness in college. But they have a similar skill set in terms of getting to the second level. And then Tyron Smith was not a polished pass protector coming out, and that's why he wasn't like a number 1 overall type of pick. So I think it's very similar in terms of the wide base, in terms of the kick slide being inconsistent, but both of them really have the tool set to, like Matt said, firm those things up and become an elite player, which Tyron Smith did. I think Ekwonu has that kind of potential as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. I see him kind of like, remember Auburn had Greg Robinson? You had like a good Greg Robinson, somebody that, like, if you have the physical skills of that player, but the mindset of like a top guard, like a Brendan Sheriff or like an Ali Marpet, somebody who just wants to like bury people. And he does get overextended in pass protection. His violence gets a little bit of a hold of him, and he's going to have to learn these things, but professional offensive line coaches should be able to, help him improve, because these are prospects, and all of them from 1 to 250 have to make improvements.
Yeah, and that actually you answered part of my other question. I was going to say, like, what strengths and weaknesses in relation to Carolina's offense and rushing desires. What would you say his strengths are? What would you say he needs to work on? You kind of touched on that, Matt.
So, I mean, I didn't really talk about his strengths. Let's talk about that. He's a load going forward, man. And if he gets his hands on you going forward in the run game, he'll put you to the ground. He's great in space. He's one of these guys you can see on highlights running downfield, 40 yards downfield on a screen pass. 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, you need someone to go behind. That's your guy. Where are you going to go on short yardage? All that sort of stuff doesn't always show up in the statistics or whatever, but you need like a bell cow to run behind when the game is on the line. And in terms of weaknesses, he just has to firm up a lot of his balance issues with like getting overextended, wanted to punch the guy so hard that he punches him out of his shorts and the guy does a little snifty move on him. There's some really interesting film of him versus Jermaine Johnson at Florida State. Those two guys were going after it, all game long. And, his film is great too. He wasn't playing, against nobodies, he's playing against top ACC opponents every week. So I just like that kind of, bulldozer mentality. Like, we're gonna run it, and we don't care if that we're gonna run it. You can't stop us. And there's certain teams that run a light 4-3 that won't be able to stop. That's my little spiel. I like him a lot. He was one of my personal favorites for the Jets, even though the Jets have more linemen than you guys. So I understand why the Jets went with Sauce Gardner. I can't be unhappy with that. But yeah, he was
the Jets did wonderful in the draft, to be honest.
Yeah, I have no complaints about how they did it, and I get why they passed on him. But this is the type of guy that can change your mentality on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what Matt said. I mean, he nailed it. I think for me, watching Ekwonu 2 years ago, I think what really improved in terms of the pass blocking was the mental side in terms of mirroring what the pass rusher did, being able to kind of stick with them in a box. Like watching him 2 years ago, he couldn't do that. When guys were more athletic, could bend around him. I thought this year he did not let that happen, and so that's okay. So these speed rushers in the NFL, Ekwonu can handle it. Like Matt said, he definitely gets caught wide and can get kind of knocked around and get run past. And I think his kick slide could use a little bit of work. There's some great film and some poor film. It's just about that consistency and being able to harness that aggression. So I'm right in line.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we could, we definitely need that. The offensive line definitely needs that extra, aggressiveness, that assertiveness. Now, here's what most Panthers fans, and I know I'm not the only one thinking this, does this mean Christensen gets moved to left guard? Is there a better style is there someone better for the gap style run game?
So I think they'll give him a chance to win that job because these coaches want to have their best 5 players on the field. Yeah. Christensen is one of their best 5. The question was, where does he play? He's a little bit outmatched as every week left tackle. I think if there was a situation where let's say Ekwonu was not available, you could bump him back out to left tackle for a game or two and be fine. Right. He's a really maybe a David Deal is a good comp for him. The guard that can play tackle, but he doesn't have the arms for it, and he will get game planned against if you leave him out there and Myles Garrett comes to town. But Ickey's the type of guy that can handle everybody, you hope, once he gets developed. Right. I mean, I also want to say that there's no perfect prospect, as Shane knows. These all have strengths and weaknesses, even the number 1 guys, even the so-called generational guys. You can look at Barry Sanders' scouting report, and they'll tell you, they'll nitpick his dancing style, So, I think we're talking about his weaknesses. What's optimistic is that you feel like he's the type of person that can learn and improve and will work.
Right.
So I would say
that, on this nifty little chart that Jeff has up, that they have him, with the left guard, is that a better kind of, I mean, if you were the offensive line coach, okay, where would this look like how you would have them, or would you move them?
So this is all fine. I would let Brady Christensen compete with Pat Elflein.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. And if Elflein has the camp of his life, maybe Brady starts as a swing. If Brady doesn't have a great camp for whatever reason. But I think in general, because of the draft capital, you're going to end up with Pat Elflein, another former wrestler, by the way, backing up center and backing up left guard, and that will be his role. But I think that these guys have all they're similar guys, and they're building this nasty attitude, of these guys that are former wrestlers and
Mm.
want to go forward. And we could talk about Cade Mays when the time comes. The 6th round pick. It's like more of the same. It's like a personality type that they're going for.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. I noticed that the guys that have like wrestling backgrounds and stuff like that. But I was curious because like I love picking your brain when it comes to stuff like this. Like I would love to see like, okay, if you were in charge of the offense, what would you do? Like I love just picking people, especially you, because I know you'll be 100% straight with me, especially because you're a Jets fan. Like you have well, I mean, I know you're becoming a Carolina person, warm to us, but ultimately you're no hards barred. What do you think, Shane?
Look, I don't have that kind of expertise that Matt has. I'll say from grading Brady Christensen, not a player that played guard in college. I think it would be a big transition for him to like, hey, we're just going to stick you here and go. I think it's going to take some time because I've definitely seen it with NFL draft prospects, guys that were tackles all their career, but really aren't going to be NFL tackles. So you draft them as a guard and think you can just plug and play. It's a completely different position with So I think that is a question of, you get into camp and he's kind of learning, and someone like a Pat Elflein who's played interior offensive line for his whole career, can do some of that early. I think it'll be interesting to see when they make a decision of what that left guard looks like.
Yeah. Thank you.
One thing that I think we can at least say is that the offensive line has been improved. And this is an area that was much talked about last year. They did a lot of other different areas, right? Other positions that they worked on, but not really offensive line. Well, they took some time over the offseason. They got Bozeman, they got Austin Corbett. Of course, the draft pick, Ickey Ekwonu. So they also have, I'm looking at their roster, as you mentioned, Elflein, Cade Mays, who we'll talk about here in a bit, the rookie, the 6th round pick, Michael Jordan, Dennis Daly. So, I mean, they're starting to build that, that depth, which is something that they kind of really didn't have.
And they've neglected
the previous
for
years.
a while. I feel like they've always neglected that part in the draft. And they kind of were just like,
Right. And who do they have to protect? That's our next segue here. And in fact, let's, I guess, get back to the draft a little bit. So that was the 6th pick overall, Ekwonu. And then they didn't have a 2nd round pick because of the Darnold trade. They didn't have a 3rd round pick because of the CJ Henderson trade. And so they couldn't make another pick until the 4th round. And if they were targeting a quarterback, most likely these guys are going to be gone, right? The guys that we thought were going to be 1st or 2nd round picks, but they instead it was Kenny Pickett who was picked in the 1st round. I don't think he was the only one, right? The only quarterback in the 1st round. Yeah. The 2nd round, were there any quarterbacks in the 2nd round? No, it was the 3rd round. It was Desmond Ridder, right? Atlanta was the next pick in the 3rd round, like the 70th overall pick or something around there.
74, I think.
Okay. And then so Carolina's, I mean, I was thinking, why are these quarterbacks falling? Like what can Carolina potentially do to move up and grab a quarterback? And that's exactly what they did. And then taking Matt Corral with the, 94th pick, I think is what it was. So
yeah.
Let's talk about Matt Corral. Shane, I guess you're my first choice here. I've got a graphic up here about Corral. One, the fact that it looks like he might pick number 9 for his jersey, the way he liked the tweet here. I think that would be a good fit for him. But 2, Matt Corral, the player, I mean, this says a lot. This quote here says a lot, in my opinion. He's here at 5:30 in the morning. The way he prepares, he comes to meetings, his approach to it, getting on the players when they're not doing things right, even defensively. Those are leadership things. This is what Lane Kiffin said about Matt Corral. So, Shane, I mean, what's maybe you can kind of put the pieces back together as far as why he fell, the value of where he is, and what he kind of brings to the table, and how he compares, say, to Sam Darnold. And is that something that us Panthers fans are going to be able to see fairly quickly, or are we going to have to wait?
So I think Matt Corral, was a great pick. I think it was worth trading that future third to get him because you're not going to find a big quarterback of this talent set next year in the third round. I think that's kind of a key to me. He was my top quarterback in this class. Now I knew he wasn't going to be the first or second quarterback taken, but I really feel like he has that lightning quick release. He has the athleticism and movement skills in that Lane Kiffin offense. It was very RPO heavy, and he showed, elite tendencies. I mean, there's some downfield passes that are absolutely great. I think he was getting to a point this past year being able to read the defenses. Kiffin was giving a little more freedom to make choices that he wasn't getting years ago. So I think there was some development that was happening. But, when you have kind of I think the reason he fell, when you have kind of an offense built around, quick passes, quick decision-making, kind of pre-snap reads, and then this is what you're going to do. There's a lot of development here. He was the quarterback of the four that took the least snaps under center. He was the quarterback of the four that probably did the least amount of going through progressions, getting to a second or third receiver. So there's just like a lot that needs to happen processing-wise for him to ultimately get to a point where you're like, hey, we can plug him in as the starting quarterback. I don't think I would expect him like day one to be that guy. And under pressure is where he struggled. He had some problems navigating the pocket and stepping up into the pocket, getting his ball placement precise. A lot of those type of things that were issues with Matt Corral last year, as well as being smaller. He had multiple injuries. I think that played a part. I think there's some teams we don't really want to deal with that. I think the leadership question, and you read that quote, is really interesting because 2 years ago, I don't think that would have been the quote. That was not Matt Corral. Matt Corral was the opposite of that 2 years ago. And last year, he really stepped up and became that leader, kind of cleaned up some of the off the field party, not being a kind of a teammate tendencies. So I think there were probably a lot of teams that as well were like, hey, we're not going to mess with a quarterback, especially in the top 50 or whatever, that has a history of this. So I think from an on-field perspective and from, what I've heard that Carolina had him as the top rated quarterback from an on-field talent perspective, that placed me. He was my number one quarterback from that perspective too. But I think can he transition to the NFL? How quickly is that going to happen? I think if I was in the position of the team, I would start Sam Darnold and see how quickly Matt Corral could pick up this offense and take snaps from under center and kind of do the things that you're asking him to do. But I would, if Sam Darnold plays poorly, and I imagine he will, that, halfway through the season, I think I would give Matt Corral a shot. And if it doesn't work out, then 2023, hey, we're going to go up and do what we have to do to get an elite guy.
Got it.
I think a lot of these quarterbacks fell. It all comes down to basically the demand of quarterbacks, and a lot of it's going to be a we'll see game, like Kenny Pickett with Pittsburgh. Is he going to come in and take the job from Trubisky? We'll see. Corral, will he take it from Darnold? We'll see. Desmond Ridder with Mariota, Malik Willis with Ryan Tannehill, even Sam Howell with the Commanders. Are any of them going to take the job? We'll see. It's not a guarantee as far as it goes.
And then, of course, I know I probably beat a dead horse with this, just the fact that, obviously these guys are going from college. It's a much faster, the game moves so much faster in the NFL, and some guys need to develop, and some guys can just, hit the ground running. You never know until they're in a position where they're then being asked to start, just how ready they are.
Yeah, a lot of the quarterbacks, it's not that they're not talented. It's not that they don't have the physical tools. It's can they take the jobs day one? And there are question marks around all these quarterbacks. And a lot of them didn't want to invest high draft capital in them because if they're not going to come in and take the starting job day one, then why would you?
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of wait and see and a lot of speculative thoughts, and we can only put together some opinions and some case histories on what we might be able to see and expect with these guys until it just kind of happens. And I think it's just it's a work in progress. Could it come together? Sure. Will it come together? Well, that's what we're gonna find out. But
I really like Corral's arm and his release.
Yeah.
He's got a bullet.
I mean, it's great for the speed of the NFL, I think. The fact that he can reset himself on a dime and throw a ball with his shoulders square, fairly accurate, able to run when necessary. He's got that pump fake that is one of the best that I've seen in terms of being able to freeze defenders or at least maybe perhaps get that double move. A lot of play action. If I remember correctly, I think it was 61% of all of his snaps or dropbacks were play action passes. That's something that you commonly see with someone who's got a very heavy RPO type of offense.
Well, the play action, if you can get the run game going with the new offensive line and Christian, the play action is going to kill the defenses. That's a great tool Carolina can use. Hope Matt can draw it up.
Yeah.
All right. That's Matt Corral. Any other thoughts on Matt before we move into the next pick?
Shane a question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So can Shane tell me a little bit about his running ability, and specifically, is there a scenario where you could take this guy and make like a goal line package just for him, or like some sort of like short yardage package for him? Is he that good of a runner?
I think he is that good of a runner. I think the question is, do you want to put him in harm's way he bulked up to 212 pounds. Like, I think that's the fear. Like, I think in terms of acceleration, when he makes that decision to run, that, they had some scripted plays for him, or when he made the decision when he was rolling out and the play wasn't there. He gets up to speed quick. He has that explosiveness that he can get to the line. I think he's probably as fast as as Desmond Ridder is ultimately in terms of explosiveness and straight line speed. I think the question is just his build he's not going to be built to take a ton of hits. And so, I don't know how you feel about that, Matt. If you have a quarterback like that, it's maybe not it wouldn't be what I would want to do all the time. It's not something I'd want to go to because I don't want him getting snapped in half here. But I think it's something you got to put in your repertoire. And I think he can be effective. I'd almost like to use it sparingly and really let him say, hey, get him out of the pocket more and let him, if there's room, go make that play slide instead of trying to take a hit, at the goal line.
Run behind Ickey. Just run behind Ickey.
Yeah. Shoot. I'm excited to see what he can do. But yeah, like you said, though, Shane, jumped up to 212 pounds. That was I want to say that was Russell Wilson's weight when he came into the NFL, or slightly, maybe a little bit more. So it's still possible, but it seems like he needs to bulk up a little bit more if he's going to be running in the NFL, and that's not necessarily. At least I don't think that that's how they want to run their offense. Not like when he played against Tennessee and ran the ball 30 times, which was just insane. But still. Well, we've got a quarterback at least that's other than Sam Darnold, so that's progress right now. So,
hey, Emmitt Smith was 5'9", 209. Just saying.
Hey, you're right. There you go.
So that brings us to our next newbie, our next rook, Mr. Brandon Smith. And Brandon Smith, I gotta ask, what type of player is linebacker Brandon Smith, and who, if any, comps would you compare him to?
So I think Brandon Smith, he is, if there's one label I'd put on him, it's underachiever. He's a player that should have done a lot better than he did with his athletic profile. As a recruit, he was one of the most athletic linebackers in his recruiting class, going to a place at Penn State where if you go look at the combine numbers of every Penn State player in this draft, even the punter, they are highly athletic. They know how to train them up and get the most out of those athletes. And Brandon Smith did not on the field do that. He doesn't play up to what athleticism that he has, kind of as that outside linebacker. He clearly has the ability to cover the tight end, to go and, even cover a slot receiver, play him in coverage, have him rush the passer. And they tried to do that at Penn State. There were always guys that were better at it than him. And so he kind of got lost in the shuffle a lot of times. I thought his instincts were subpar. And I think it's just the type of player that, hey, if you can coach him up and you can get him on the mental side to really catch up to where he needs to be, I mean, he could be a starting linebacker, and I even want to say one of the better linebackers in the entire NFL. He has that type of ability. I comped him to Baron Browning, who was drafted last year out of Ohio State, went to Denver, very similar profiles where super athletes that just never put it all together. And so I think this is kind of a swing for the fences, home run type of pick. Do you get an outside linebacker who can do everything and be everything, or do you get a guy that you can't see the field because he doesn't understand what the offense is doing? I think there's a high upside and very high downside with Brandon Smith.
Well, that's a good way to look at it, the highs and the lows, and the the comparison that you made as well. So I guess nothing but optimism is I guess maybe what fans can hope for with Brandon Smith.
Well, Brandon Smith, physically, he's 6'4", 250, and his 40-yard dash was in the top 90%, and his shuttle and all that. I mean, he physically he's great, and he's got the tools. Like you said, he's just a bit of an underachiever. They just got to figure out what he's
how would you say, like, how does he fit into the current Panthers defense?
I don't know, that might be a better question for Matt, I guess. If you put this highly athletic 250-pound outside linebacker, is that how they kind of how would they utilize someone like that?
Well, I mean, they've got Shaq Thompson, right? Corey Littleton, who they signed in the offseason. Damian Wilson, who's already had troubles with the law. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the greatest linebacker room, but Shaq is definitely the main guy, I think. And of course, they also have Jeremy Chin coming in too to play some kind of like almost like a roving type of linebacker. But Matt, I interrupted you, man. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's cool. I just wanted to say that to go off of Brittany's question, if I was in charge of the unit, I would blitz him. I'd put him on the field and say, your job is to go get this guy. Keep it very simple for him. Like a Sam linebacker that blitzes, or maybe you put his hand in the dirt and try to make like Hassan Reddick part 2 somehow. Like, I don't know if he has those kind of moves, but if he has the speed and the athleticism, the sky's the limit. I would just keep it simple, stupid for him. Kiss. And I'm coming to you from Pennsylvania right now, and the legacy of Penn State linebackers is very real. I mean, it takes a lot to even get recruited for them and to be like a guy. And obviously he's not like Postlesny or whatever, like some like amazing player on the field, but like that program is known for it,
Yeah.
Yep. Again, more hope and optimism here for Panthers fans. Like I said, I think if he could turn into a very, very light Hassan Reddick, I think that would be that'd be great. I mean, Carolina's looking to replace him for sure. And
the Diet Coke of Hassan Reddick.
there you go. The Coke Zero.
Coke Zero.
If you want to replace Hassan Reddick, I like Barno.
That's a great segue, Tom. Let's talk about, if we can. Let's talk about these additional picks. And in round 6, their first pick, they had 2 picks in the 6th round and then 1 in the 7th. So Amare Barno, a defensive end out of Virginia Tech, who had like extremely high fast speed scores. Mm-hmm. I really honestly don't know too much about him, so I'm looking for your guidance and understanding here, Shane, as far as what type of player he is and how he can kind of mesh with the rest of the defensive unit.
I really liked Amare Barno. I think if he had been taken in the late 3rd, early 4th round, I wouldn't have batted an eye. So I think to get him in the 6th could be a potential steal. The fastest 40 time for any edge player ever in the NFL draft, a 4.37 at 6'6", 245. It wasn't like he was a 220-pounder coming in either. And when you watch Virginia Tech, I mean, he jumps out on the film. I mean, he is a guy that pursued the quarterback, was a pass rusher through and through. They kind of let him pin his ears back with a good bend around the edge. And someone I definitely noticed early on and wasn't getting a lot of buzz. I was like, okay, I don't know. And then really that workout is what kind of blew him up when he said, okay, he doesn't quite play up to those numbers, but it's not that far off. He has that type of athleticism. And Virginia Tech's defense was a solid unit, but didn't have those type of athletes. So he definitely stood out there. I mean, I think he could be kind of a situational, rotational pass rusher that you bring in on third down and, you let him I kind of like him standing up a little bit more and letting him just get up to full speed pretty quickly and not have to engage. Where he struggled was when he got engagement, when an offensive lineman locked up with him, he could not get around him. Like that first step, that explosive step and bend, that's where he wins. He's not a stack and shed guy. He doesn't have this variety of pass rush moves. He's not going to bull rush. He doesn't have that strength. So I think that's why he probably fell a little bit. A lot of teams, I don't know where we're going to play him. And I think that's the thing is if you can figure out where to play him, the talent is there. You just got to find the right fit for him.
Gotcha. That's another really good explanation of who he is and what he brings to the table and, what our expectations are for him. So, all right, Matt, let's switch back to you because we have the other 6th round pick, and that's the offensive, I guess he was a guard at Tennessee, Cade Mays. What can you tell us about Cade Mays, Matt?
So he's he's like 6'5", 310. He's known for versatility. He's got experience at like all 5 positions, I believe, throughout his career. I think he'd probably end up on the interior, but there's a chance he could be like a right tackle. Obviously, it's not a big need for you guys with Taylor Moton, who's like the underrated, pillar of the offensive line year in and year out. But, long term, he could sub in anywhere. He could probably fight for that left guard job in a couple years if it doesn't work out for whatever reasons. And, you look at his profile, it's a lot similar of the same words that you'll see in Ickey's profile. Violent, lower body, pushing people, hand fighter, and that's like kind of the attitude they're going for. We talked about the quarterbacks and the uncertainty with, Darnold or, possibly, Corral. But, what helps a quarterback is a good running game where you take the pressure off these guys to have to do it all from a pocket, and you make it more of a situation where, you're on schedule. It's 2nd and 4. It's not 2nd and 9,
Yeah. Yeah. And, as we mentioned earlier, the offensive line is just continuing to add depth. And I think that's just, something that needs to be applauded. And as far as fans are concerned, any additional piece to that offensive line is a good thing. So
let me ask you, Matt.
Yeah.
We've talked about Christensen. We've talked about Elflein. We just talked about Mays. What about Deontay Brown? There's no love for Deontay Brown, man. Where does he fit into the equation?
So he's currently listed on the right side, backing up Corbett. And it's a question to me. Some of these guys might not be able to do both. So you might not hear Deontay Brown in the left guard conversation for whatever reason. Or maybe how they want to set the offense up with a speed side or a power side. So I would see him as a power player, right guard sub. No one wants to hear the free agent you just got from the Rams, could need a replacement. But, if anybody gets hurt, you have to go to depth. And guys are, it's very rare for a team to make it through 17 games completely uninjured. They're either getting injured early and they're fighting back like the Rams, or they've been injured like the Packers and they're just waiting for this one guy to come off the shelf forever. So it's a tough schedule and you need guys, not necessarily whether it's him or Dennis Daly. Dennis Daly seems to play like every year at some point, I don't know if they have room for all these guys, with all this like pipeline stuff happening. But they might end up cutting a guy who ends up a player for a different team, and that's like a sign of improvement for a team.
Right. Yeah. Well, Corbett's also like 34 years old. We don't know how long he could actually be with the team. Could be a year, could be 2, could be 3. Who knows?
Can I say too for Cade Mays? Just Matt nailed it. But if you're a fan of the Panthers, go on to huddle.com, search Cade Mays. Well, go watch his high school highlights. I mean, he's a 5-star recruit. There's a reason. I mean, he's just burying guys. He's a fun high school guy to watch. We'll see if he can bring that back.
Yeah, if he can do that, of course that's always going to help the offensive line. So that's good. Sounds like it's a good pick with good value in the 6th round. All right, so one last pick in the 7th round. Shane, I mean, anytime you get a 7th round pick, I mean, it's kind of a catch as catch can, right? I mean, they might pan out, they might not. But this was Kalon Barnes, the cornerback out of Baylor. Go figure. So Matt Rule's probably familiar with him. But Kalon Barnes, was he a top 20, top 25 corner for you here, Shane? What should we know about him?
Yeah, I think he was super interesting because of the speed that he brings to the table, right? I mean, he ran the 4.23. That's ultimately where, what's interesting, because he has the explosion, like off the line of scrimmage. I mean, when he is either closing or after he starts turning and running, he could catch anyone. And so I think you have a player that, like, special teams wise, if that's something that he's in, I think I think that's something he can excel at. Maybe you can kind of train him up there. And it's someone with some upside when you have the explosion and speed that he does. He was my corner 24, so just inside that top 25. I think to get that in the 7th round is great. The problem is he's pretty thin. He's not strong. He's not going to jam you at the line. You can't really put him up against the line of scrimmage. I mean, these big NFL receivers, even small ones, will probably knock him right off the line. He doesn't like to tackle. He's kind of allergic to it. And he's not super agile. I mean, the back pedal is like, for a guy who's 5'11", 183, he shouldn't be as stiff as he is and as athletic as he is. But I think that agility of kind of the short space movement is a problem for him. So he's kind of just this lump of clay. If you can take that speed and that explosion and turn it into something, I mean, you can turn it into something, but there's a lot, the reason he fell to the 7th, there's a lot to work on. He's just not a football player at this point.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, it's it's good to hear the good and the bad, and we've it seems like we've heard that from a lot of these different players here in the draft, and hopefully we see more good than bad as far as Panthers fans are concerned. So
see if he can return some punts.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Return punts, something, special teams, anything. Speed. You can't coach speed. So
I wonder if he's a kick returner that backs up on like a practice squad guy, and then Andre Roberts is like the guy right now, but maybe he's the guy next year. I mean, if you get somebody that fast who doesn't like to tackle, try him a kick returner.
Or you put him back on one of those really long field goals and see if he can catch it and go off with it, because if he breaks the tackle, he's gone.
It's true. That's true. All right. Brittany, Tom?
The 2023 quarterback draft class. Who are the quarterbacks coming up that we should know about for next year?
We're in a weird state because all those quarterbacks fell. And so I think everyone's getting a little quarterback crazy in this 2023 class. I mean, there's 2 elite players, right? CJ Stroud, the quarterback at Ohio State, and Bryce Young, the quarterback out of Alabama, are top tier, probably going to be top 5 picks if all goes well this year. There's no injuries or major setbacks. I think those 2 players are going to be at the top. So if you really stink, then you have a shot at those guys. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot. It's going to depend. I think any other quarterback you see in a 2023 round 1 mock is a projection that player is going to get a lot better than they were last year. I think to me, my next 2 are Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, who kind of came in mid-season, but was exceptional, broke some records there at Miami in just the short time that he played. His receivers are awful. They can't catch a cold, but he gets the ball there, and so I really like him. Anthony Richardson from Florida is big, strong, fast Cam Newton, type of player that hasn't really found that Cam Newton year like he had at Auburn yet. Maybe this is it. And then, I could just list the names of guys that people think could be first-round picks. Will Levis out of Kentucky, Grayson McCall out of Coastal Carolina, Spencer Rattler going to South Carolina this year. Can he bring it back? Phil Jurgovic out of Boston College, Hendon Hooker, Tennessee, Tanner McKee, Stanford's getting a lot of buzz. So there's a bunch of guys that could end up in that position. And we were talking, some mocks have 7 quarterbacks going in the first round. It's not going to happen. But there are players that have that kind of potential. Are they going to meet it, or are we just going to have these top two and that's kind of it? That's the big question right now.
Yeah, Shane, wow, that was a little bit of a Mel Kiper moment there where you were just kind of going nonstop, not taking a breath, just naming names left and right and left, center and bottom.
I was getting thirsty just listening.
Yeah, right. I'm like, whoa, man, take it all in. Woo!
Sounds like a lot of players.
So, yeah, you sure did. But so I have a question, and it revolves around CJ Stroud as well as Bryce Young. Are these types of players, are particularly these two, are we talking about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert here as far as, like play ability, potential? And I know there's another year to go, right, till we can see them develop and grow both, on the field as well as off. But what are we looking for as far as these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Stroud has a little bit of that Justin Herbert type of ability. He is 6'3", 218. He has a little, not quite as big as Herbert, but has that big arm that can kind of hit anywhere on the field. One of the interesting things about both CJ Stroud and Bryce Young is they both are athletic. They both can run. Neither ran last year. They just didn't do it. And so that's some of my analytics guys that I'm friends with are like, oh, that's not good. I'm like, but they can, like, they're really athletic. They can run. They just didn't do it. So I think Stroud has that ability similar to Herbert, where he didn't run as much in college, especially last year. But I think Stroud has that potential. I think Bryce Young more Russell Wilson. He's smaller, but moves around the pocket and kind of finds his way to navigate and find his guy down the field. Personally, I like Jameson Williams. I thought he was great. I think Bryce Young made Jameson Williams a little more than he was this past season with some good ball placement and some great plays. If there's one of those two I think could fall off, I think it's probably Bryce Young just because of the size. I think there is some fear there where those type, guy he's probably going to come in under 6 feet tall. How do you really feel about that? Is that, I think there's still teams that'll be uneasy about it, but I do think you have elite potential in both of these players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Stroud's got the whammy on him. Ohio State quarterback.
Don't scout the helmet. You scout the player. What's the last Texas Tech quarterback? And then Patrick Mahomes came. If you're going to miss out, you don't want to miss out on the next guy.
Hey, man, name me a successful Ohio State quarterback in the NFL.
Mike Tomczak.
I always scout the helmet, but I'm not very good at it.
Oh, man. All right. Hey, so because we're talking about the Panthers, I also want to talk about another team in the NFC South. And this is a little bit of a curveball. This is not a question that you might be prepared for, but I want your answer anyway. So between Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder, which one do you think, has a better future, a better career out of those two? Either one, Matt or Shane, you both can answer this.
I'll go first. I was a big fan of Ridder, to be honest. I felt like I was diving deep on Alex Pierce film, and I felt like the ball placement was garbage. There could have been so many more bombs and more plays, and he's like a good player, but I don't really get the hype on Desmond Ridder, to be honest. And Corral's in the SEC. He's like a leader. I mean, I talk about him running because it was like, all right, if you're like talking about draft capital, you got Darnold. How do you get this other guy on the field? And like, and are you worried about him getting hurt? Well, not if you're going to pick CJ Stroud next year. You know what I mean? Like, this is like the NFL. It's not like these are like precious, collectibles that you wrap up in bubble wrap. You get them out there, especially rookies. Rookies, you ask them to do things that they normally wouldn't do, and then Terrell Davis proves it. Then he becomes running back one. Until then, you're playing special teams or something. Not that they would do that with a quarterback, but I think Corral has more of a leadership, like rally the guys around it, and worst case, there's like a Jordan Love situation where just having him there makes Darnold get his life together.
Right. I mean, we have that possibility. All right, Shane, it looks like you have something to want to say.
No. I mean, look, Matt Corral's my QB1, Desmond Ridder's my QB5. I mean, I'm with Matt. Like, Desmond Ridder's ball placement was so much worse than Corral, and that's a big issue to me. I do disagree. I think the leadership side, I think Ridder has shown, 2 undefeated regular seasons. There are a couple, some clutch moments, especially running the football that he pulled out. Like, I think he could be one of those players that comes in and you never feel good about. It's never good, but somehow like the team's always in it. But I would push, if I had to push the chips in on a quarterback, I'd push it on Corral, because I think he has that high end superstar potential with his arm. If, like I said, I think if the mental side catches up, so I would bet on Corral myself over Ridder. But I can see why a team, I think it's a good fit in Atlanta for Ridder. I can see why a team maybe wanted to see if they could mold Ridder's ball placement a little more instead of Matt Corral's transition from RPO to pro offense. I think that's going to be what determines it. Which of these 2 quarterbacks can transition the best? That's who's going to be the better quarterback.
I think it's definitely Corral, because he's got a better supporting cast that's building around him. With Christian, with DJ, with a good Robbie Anderson. We'll say a good Robbie Anderson. Tommy Tremble, Ickey, Tyler Moten. He's got a better supporting cast. I mean, the only player I can name off Atlanta's offense right now was Pitts. I know they drafted a receiver, but he lost all his receivers before they drafted that guy.
Yeah.
I wonder if the Panthers would ever be offensive coaching staff would ever be willing to simplify. If they get in a situation where like Corral is hot, let's just go RPO, like the Ravens do with Lamar. It's like you don't necessarily have to run this Mike Shanahan like insane offense. You could just run like RPO if that's what's working. Some teams are willing to do it, some teams are not. But if you get in a spot where you're playing this guy early, you got to dumb it down for him. You're not going to be asking him to do all these complicated hot route, bendy route concepts. You're just going to tell him, do your thing, bro. Do the thing you do. And there's more of that now than there used to be. It used to be, he has to learn our system. He has to do it my way. And now they're kind of, it depends. I don't know if Matt Rule would ever do that, but if he would, there's an opportunity there.
Well, McAdoo's not one for flash players, flashy plays like that from what I can remember. Mostly what McAdoo likes to work with quarterbacks is knowing going through your progressions, your footwork, knowing where you got to get the ball out. That's what he's been praised for. And he clearly liked Corral's physical tools. There was a quarterback he wanted to trade up for by the name of Patrick Mahomes, and the Giants told him no. So he wasn't wrong on that one. Hopefully he's not wrong on Corral.
Yep. Hey, Shane, I got another question in regards to the draft next year. Now, we already talked about Stroud and Young. Are there any other players that could potentially take that, top 5 pick place that might be able to get in there before a quarterback is picked, even though that's probably not the case? But anyone that sticks out?
It might be the case. Will Anderson, the edge rusher from Alabama, is probably the best edge rusher I've scouted so far since 2004. I mean, we've had some great ones, right? I mean, he is that good. Every single play, he is dominant. So if a team picks number 1 and they don't need a quarterback, you would think, oh, they can ransom everything, right, and go down. They may not want to. I mean, this could be the best pass rusher. I mean, he has some Lawrence Taylor in him. I mean, he is that type of guy.
Better than Myles Garrett?
Better than Myles Garrett.
Wow.
I think, and Myles better than Chase Young, better than the Bosas. I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, he would have been the number 1 pick by a mile this year. Wow. if he could have declared. So, I mean, we'll see if he keeps it up, right? He can these guys can always, I say that, and then in a year you look back like, wow, Shane was on something. Because
I would bet a nickel against you, Shane.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
No, just because when these teams get into the quarterback, we were just in a draft where there was no quarterbacks, but when they get into this quarterback mode, the feeding frenzy starts, and then they all start trading up. And I actually really like Will Anderson. He's awesome on film. My only concern with him is he's like, when you compare him to Myles Garrett, Myles Garrett's like 280, Myles Garrett's like damn near 290 sometimes. And like, Will Anderson's more like a Sam. He's like a 245 guy. And like, do you play him like Anthony Barr? Do you like play him like as a Sam for a couple downs and then like put his hand in the dirt for third down? He's not like a true big 4-3 edge. He's more of a perfect 3-4 player. I mean, he's awesome. I'm not like trying to disparage the player, but I could see a guy being like, what am I going to do with this 243-pound defensive end, depending on the system?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more Von Miller, I guess, right? That kind of, you're playing him outside and letting him pin his ears back and go kind of guy.
Well, it's good. Well, it's good for Jacksonville to know who to look at for pick number 1 next year.
Oh man,
year.
Yeah, well, hopefully Jacksonville will be able to get something out of Trevor Lawrence in his second year. I just shudder to think of Lawrence struggling in his second year. Maybe that was all just issues with Urban Meyer, right? So who knows? But
I think sometimes we forget how long it takes for a quarterback. We see guys that come out right away, and we're just like, why aren't you like him? And it took Josh Allen 3 years. It takes some of these guys. It takes 2 or 3 years, to really have any sort of idea of what they're looking at.
My father always said it was 5 years, but people saw Mahomes, they saw Herbert. They just see these guys come out and put it all together, and that's the exception, especially with the rookie contracts. By the 5th year, you got to pick up the option, and they want you on the field. They don't want to baby you, and they want to see what they have, or they're going to turn into the next guy.
Right. Plus, they want to have your quarterback on the rookie deal too, so that they can spend their money in other places. So
that's it.
All right. Well, shoot, I don't have anything else really to discuss. We've covered a lot.
We have one question that Tom likes to ask usually. I don't want to steal his thunder, but if you guys have any plugs or charities that you would like to discuss, anything that you would like to bring to the light of the viewers, something that you're passionate about, let's hear it.
Well, I'm a teacher, so
awesome.
DonorsChoose.org is always my go-to. If you want to donate to a classroom, you can donate to a specific teacher's classroom project there. So if anyone's interested, that's where I always go to help out the teachers out there.
What was that again, Shane? I'll put it up on the screen.
Sure. DonorsChoose.org. DonorsChoose.org.
Got it. All right. And Matt, we were working with it was a
community fridge.
Yeah, the community fridge. That's right. That's what it was. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, East Falls Community Fridge. It's they take donations they get from food banks, and people just come and take what they need. Hunger's a real problem these days, and I just feel like we are still the greatest country in the world. I don't care what anyone says, and nobody should be going hungry. And I like Shane's charity. Teachers, man, are doing it. And
absolutely. Before I got into my current career, I taught for 9.5 years. It was preschool, but it's challenging and it's rewarding. And I think I think that charity is really, I think both charities are really great. We talk a lot about, sports here on Carolina Fandom and, what the players, we talk about their skill set. We talk about, and it's all about sports for us. It fills our emotional bank account, right? As fans, we like to get excited for the new year. I mean, even I'm sure, in your line of work with the draft, and you get excited to evaluate different players and different, see what they've got. I think it's very important to invest in people's emotional bank account outside of sports as well. That's why we like to ask about charities and things that, you're passionate about on the side, because you never know, someone could be listening, somebody who wants to make a difference in someone's life, and you never know who could make a difference. And
we've had quite a few great charities mentioned on. We got Hype for Life by Hype Man Lucci, helping out the parents and kids with autism.
Yeah.
You got Wounded Warriors by our buddy John.
Mm-hmm.
You got Block Charlotte that serves the community of Charlotte. Cuddy Cutright. Shout out to Cuddy.
Yeah.
And then we got what is it? The fridge?
Community
fridge.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It just feels good to give, They say giver is for the giver, and sometimes it feels good to help other people out. It's a free natural high, not addictive.
It really is, but it does. It all goes back to investing in communities and investing in other people.
Invest in each other.
Right. Absolutely.
Bet on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, we appreciate you coming on, of course, and sharing your knowledge and your thoughts and your opinions. And you guys hit it out of the park. Really good. Excellent show. Shane, you can find him at draftcountdown.com as well as his podcast, Devy Marketplace. So check that out. And then, of course, Matt can be found at footballguys.com where he writes. He's an offensive line writer, writing over 1,000 words a week during the season, all about the offensive line and how teams are building and rising, falling, and of course getting that cohesion that offensive lines do throughout the year. So, guys, appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, man, it was a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Yep. Shout out.
And guys, we will see you next time, and thanks for tuning in. Give us a like and subscribe and share your comments, what you like, what you don't like, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Keep pounding.